Welcome back to part 2 on this Finding Freedom podcast with my co-host Garrett Murphy. And we already episode 1 or part 1 of this where we said what I wish someone would have told me before I ever looked at porn. Today, this episode is part 2, which is what I wish someone would have told me after I looked at porn. Again, Garrett, what are you hoping, what you're aiming at? This was your idea. I love it. I got on board quickly with it. When you think about what are you hoping today kind of is aiming at with what people wish that we're going to share people's responses and thoughts to this, what people wish someone would have told them after they looked at porn.
Yeah. So I think for most of the people I've ever talked to, they can remember when they first saw pornography. Right. And there's a reason for that, right? Right. Because it did something to them mentally, physically, emotionally, just like everything, like something happens. And that, again, yes, that's the dangerous part of it all, is that it feels strange and good. And there's something very enticing about it. It's a very rare case that someone's kind of repulsed by it when they see it. Now that does happen. I have heard of that. But and when those things take place, it really changes, and maybe conversations ideas that person had. Again, we've met very few people whose parent had a conversation with them, at least not around our age, whose parent had a conversation with them about it. Something changes, and as you and I talked about when we were talking about doing this episode, it shifts everything, because we've now felt I'm even more curious, and that felt really good. And for me, my first experience was, what in the world just happened? I want that to happen again, and I'm going to figure this out. And it almost became this like, it was out of this curiosity that was fed by, that felt really good and crazy and strange. Like, so
you and I both share that curiosity. Like, curiosity was driving me at first.
Yeah.
And then I've never robbed a bank. Let me be clear about that. Or I've never robbed anything, but I've never robbed a jewelry store. It felt like I had robbed a jewelry store and got away with it. I've never said that. I've never thought it out. No, it's okay. Like, it's supposed to be funny because, like, I felt, while simultaneously feeling like, and I'm going to jail now. Like, all metaphorically.
Absolutely.
It was like, I robbed a jewelry store. I saw things I've never seen in my life. And my first time was like this, like a pretty big exposure, in the sense of, like, it wasn't just like one image or something. And I felt like, oh my gosh, like, what the heck just happened? And like, I was like simultaneously terrified and immediately was craving more. But like, I knew my life had changed. Like, I didn't mean,
absolutely.
I didn't think it was like, it was, I could never unknow what I just knew. And I could never like that. It was that accessible, was like, my brain couldn't fake itself out to not know that it was that accessible.
Yeah.
So what I wish someone would have told me after that point is definitely an interesting topic.
Yeah. That's why I think it's worth it. I was at somebody's house. I was visiting a friend who was at their grandparents' house, and they had access to some sort of channel where you could get softcore. It was pretty much like softcore. It was like a 2-hour movie of Bikini Beach Hoedown. So you can imagine all the things that were involved in the softcore porn movie. And we sit there and watch this. And so, like, then there was this draw of, other people have channels I don't have. And but
there's a whole nother world out there.
I literally can remember, and I have a horrible memory, but I can remember that happened. I couldn't sleep that night for what had happened. And just like, there was fear, and I was scared. And at the same time,
simultaneously craving it.
So absolutely. And I remember getting home the next day, and
you're like, Mom, do we have HBO? Like, I mean, what?
Mom, I'm really tired. I'm going to say, like, I'm going to take a nap for the rest of the day, kind of thing. And it's like, everything changed after that moment. And I just won't ever forget it, because my life changed, and I knew it. It's like, in that moment, like you said, you cannot unknow what you know now.
Yeah.
And didn't know what even happened, much less what to do, or that it was normal. I wasn't a monster or whatever, but had no one to talk to, or didn't feel I did, because no one had ever brought the conversation up with me. And that's why I think this is so important for parents to talk to their kids early on, before or after. So if you haven't checked out our first episode, please check it out. But this is the episode of what to talk to your, what do I wish somebody said after I first saw pornography.
Yeah. So let's jump right in here to, again, this is question number 2, episode 2, and with what do you wish someone had told you after you looked at porn for the first time? Mike Likes Freedom, who was 16 when he first looked at porn or got exposed to it, said, after I first looked at porn, I wish someone would have told me that God's grace is enough. Nothing can separate me from his love. I also wish someone would have said that they were willing to walk with me in this to keep me from falling deeper. Thank you, Mike Likes Freedom, for sharing that.
Yes.
Man, Garrett, where you at with that? How's that hitting you, man?
I think because I think this is a starting point. I wish someone had said they were willing to walk with me. And just
how big that
deeper.
Thought is, dude. How big that is, and how small that sounds, but how big it is in reality. I pray the same thing. Mike Likes Freedom. I wish that someone would have just said, like, man, like, hey, if this ever happens, I love you. God's grace is sufficient. I would love to walk with you in that. Like, I want to help you out. You're not alone. Like, anything in the realm of that would have been like incredible. Like, preemptively, before, during, or after. Like,
well,
oh, man.
I agree. And this makes me wonder, and we could take a survey of these, 10 guys who responded, what their relationship was like with their parents, their mother or their father. Like, because it's a real, there's a realness to, I'm not that kid's parent. I shouldn't be talking to them at all, especially at that age, right? I wouldn't want somebody talking to my 10-year-old. That's what I'm saying. Parents, own it. Own it.
Right.
If somebody doesn't have a father figure, I had a conversation with a parent this week, and I said, I know I've heard, I kind of understand what's going on in your family dynamics. There's not really a father present. I'd be willing to talk. Like, I can tell you what I'd say and how I'd say it, but I'd be willing to talk because he needs someone that he can talk to. Like, I'd be willing to do that, to be that person, because even more so without a father figure in his life. He needs that those conversations, somebody that will walk with him so that he doesn't fall deeper. And that sticks out to me in this particular response. That's what it feels like. You just fell into, like you said, that I need to go to jail, or I'm in jail now, or whatever. But it's like falling deeper, man, and deeper into this darkness of, I'm hiding something now that I never really had that before. I never felt like I was hiding something until I came home that day. And I'll never forget it.
Yeah. I remember feeling internally thinking the thought, meaning it didn't come out of my mouth to anybody, because that was the point, was like, I felt like, oh crap, I've got to take this to the grave with me, which is obviously not what I've done by the grace of God. Yes. But that's through people who were already talking about it, who invited me in to talk about it with them. And they opened that door for me, and they made that space feel safe. But like, I just felt like, oh man, I got to like carry this for the rest of my life. It was such a terrible, unhealthy way to think, but it's the way a lot of people feel. Garrett, what is that one guy who was 8 years old when he was exposed to porn? What did he say about this question?
He said, after I first looked at porn, I wish someone would have told me that you're not alone and don't ever have to feel like you need to hide it or walk this journey by yourself. Continue to speak it into the light. You aren't defined by this mistake. You are not your mistake. You are covered by the grace and the mercy of Jesus.
See, you guys hearing a theme? Are you hearing the theme? Are you hearing the theme? That's 2. I guarantee you it's not the last time you hear this theme. Okay? Because it's what most people, I say particularly Christian men, it's what almost all of them are craving. Is like, I don't want this. I need someone to help me, but a lot of people just don't think that's an option, or are terrified of the implications of that. Man, thank you that one guy for sharing that. Noah's Snark, who was 11 when he was exposed to pornography, said, after I first looked at porn, I wish someone would have told me never, ever look at it again. Not once in a while or infrequently or even with your spouse. Zero exceptions. It's all fake, stereotyped, and cinematic to entice and hook the viewer. Real life sex with your future spouse will most certainly be different than the facade of porn. You are not alone in the struggle and don't need to live a life full of shame. The reality is that most men, and many women too, have and or continue to look at porn. You are loved by God, and God can set you free. Man, that's Noah Snark's spitting some wisdom here, you know.
That Noah Stark, we're going to record next week if you'd like to be a guest on our podcast. I love your bullet points, man. They're strong. Sounds like you got some passion for this. I'd love to hear your testimony, man. So. Yeah,
Noah Snark, reach out to us if you want to be on the podcast. This is true for any of these guys with crazy handles. Right. Absolutely. I know we offered that invitation already to that one guy, but this is true for all that.
That's right.
Honestly, if you're listening, I'd entertain any of you. If you're listening and you can make even the remotely compelling argument, because an honest conversation with people, I think, really personalizes this for people. So if you're somebody who says, hey, I can step into light at that degree, not everybody's ready to be on camera on the interweb talking about this topic. But if that's somebody who says, hey, that's a healthy next step for me, that'd be great. All right.
Yeah.
Harry. How would you say it in the Home Alone style, Garrett? Have you ever seen Home Alone?
My wife makes our family watch that at
Dude,
least
it's my favorite. It's my favorite Christmas movies. Home Alone.
My 10-year-old son actually is like, oh, can we watch a movie this weekend or tonight or whatever? And we're like, no. And he's like, what about Home Alone? Because he knows my wife will be like, maybe. Yeah.
How would you say Harry?
Harry? I have no idea.
There you go. That was good.
A little was not good.
Grungy,
that was definitely not good. All right. Anyway, sorry if I butchered your name, Harry. So he says, after the first time I watched porn, I wish someone would have told me to stop. Again, all caps, exclamation point. I wonder if he was the one that said that the first time. I don't think he was.
I don't think he was.
In the last episode. Okay, so once again, all caps, exclamation point, stop. It was made out to be something that everyone did, but I wish that someone would have said that it is in fact not something that everyone does, and the impact it can have on me if I continue to watch it. So he wishes he had more conversations, someone explaining to him what impact this will have on him if he continues to watch it, because obviously it had impact because he continued to watch it as we all did, and it dramatically shaped how we viewed sex, relationship, women, marriage, all these different things through this fake, false, scripted, and evil entertainment industry, entertaining the flesh. So
I mean, I just hear him saying, like, I wish someone would have countered all the other voices. I wish someone would have came in with the truth and shed light on it. And again, it sounds so simple, but most people haven't experienced that, and at least in healthy grace and truth ways. And thank you, Harry, for sharing that with us. We've got Facing the Sun, who said, after I first looked at porn, I wish someone would have told me that God has better things to offer. Let's go explore some of those better things together. It's such a short, simple, but beautiful response. It's like, I needed someone to invite me in to the treasures and richness of God and the better things that he has to offer. That he's the designer. He made all things, and true life is found in him. Let's go explore that together. Let's go, like, instead of eating the cotton candy, let's go explore how to smoke a brisket. You know, I'm joking, like, metaphorically. You know, like, there's deeper, richer, better things. that are like good and healthy and lasting.
Well, I think that it's important for us to talk about his answer to our first question, which was, what do you wish somebody had talked to you about before you ever looked at pornography for the first time? And he said at the time he was exposed, he wasn't a Christian at all, and he reveled in sin or something like that.
Yeah.
And he said, I wish somebody had just shared the beauty of the grace, the gospel.
Yeah.
Somebody had shared the gospel with me. And so in this one, that God has better things to offer and to explore those, right? So again, we're talking about a world that it is normalized for young boys to be talking about pornography, to be showing each other pornography, and certainly for almost all forms of media to just be, everything is sexualized. That's how they draw your attention, and that's how they're using for marketing, and getting you hooked on whatever it is they have. They have to have elements of sexuality.
There is a reality, Garrett, that a lot of people think that God is withholding the good stuff from us, and a lot of people like Facing the Sun, that he just had never really been shown or told that there is better things in Jesus Christ, like you said, as a non-believer. And I think there's a lot of Christians out there, because he was an unbeliever at the time, but I think there's a lot of Christians out there still have believed the lie that the better things are out there in the ways of the world and the flesh, and indulging in that, and that to follow God and his ways is like, I don't know, just like isn't really living. And I this is not the point of this episode, but it's like, man, that is a lie from the enemy.
Yeah.
He's literally trying to call good bad and bad good. And man, we have, as people, have fallen for that so often.
Yep.
So thank you, Facing the Sun. Garrett, what does Ipkiss say, who was 9 years old when he was exposed to pornography?
He said that I thought that I was strong enough. I thought that I could stop it if I needed to, and I don't need help. It's too embarrassing to talk with anyone, and it doesn't affect me anymore. I wish that somebody had reminded me that God's truth is better and smarter and stronger than I am. I wish someone would have told me to repent, confess, and get accountability, and to run from this type of temptation.
Yeah, you'd mentioned that, Garrett, right? It's this like, flee, run. You know, like, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you mentioned Paul, who mentioned it. Like, it's and I mentioned you mentioning it, that Paul mentioned it. But
and Paul was mentioning it, that the Holy Spirit had inspired him to tell us to run.
You get it. Like this, let's all mention it. But he's just saying, like, I thought I could do it on my own. I thought I was strong enough. I thought I was smart enough. I thought I could just stop if I need to stop. But I needed someone to tell me the truth, that God is stronger and better and smarter, and that I wish someone would invited me into repentance, to turn from it and go toward God, to confess it and not hide it and harbor that in my heart, and get accountability to run from this type of temptation. Man, so true. So true.
I think I lived thinking that way for 20 years. I can do this.
Exactly.
I can beat this. I can beat this.
Right. And it's like, it's like God's looking at you, testing you, like when are you going to be strong enough? And that's not from the Lord. That's not from the Lord, but that's like the enemy using the voice of God to be like, God, just like, Garrett, when are you going to get your crap together? Garrett, when are you going to buck up and be strong enough? When are you going to have enough self-control? You know, I've created you now. Now the rest is on you. You know what I mean? It's like, I got
destroyed. I chose to fight the battle alone. Got destroyed. Just destroyed. So
yeah. And it's what everybody I talk to who's ever been on this journey is exactly what happened to them until they've actually handed it over to Jesus. All right. Short King 20, who was 11 when he was first exposed to pornography, said, after I looked at porn for the first time, I was exposed to several things I didn't know about beforehand. I was confused and completely filled with guilt. I had an existential crisis where I was worried about the judgment day and how terrifying it would be. The only thing that I could think that would have made me feel better was if someone I respected and who loved me told me that I was now in a spiritual battle and that there were millions of others facing the same temptations that I was, and that I was not alone in my guilt. I also wish that they would have told me to cut out negative friends in my life who glorified porn and encouraged me to look at it. Thank you, Short King 20, for sharing that, man. I love how you said the only thing that would have made me feel better is if someone I respected and who loved me told me, and then he goes on from there. But it still boils back to, like, I do wish someone, I think the only thing that would have helped me, in fact, in talking with people in that journey, you know, even you and I, Garrett, we didn't find hope until someone, a brother in Christ, in our case, talked to us about it, was willing to talk about it so we could talk about it and confess. Like, until this happens, I feel like we're stuck in the dark.
Yeah.
I really do.
I think internally, right, the negative impacts internally, where he says, I was confused and completely filled with guilt. Like, I remember that confusion, because it's like all of a sudden, one of the reasons we don't forget the day or the thoughts and the feelings was that it's like immediately the confusion was in our identity, because it became a part of our identity at that moment, because we knew it was something big. It was something huge. Like, so parents, moms, especially, probably, like, understand this is a really big deal, the exposure, and what happens that comes along with that. Yeah. That's what becomes really addictive. It's not necessarily the exposure to pornography. It could just be to masturbation. And it's so confusing, especially when nobody's helped walking you through that. And that resonates with me. Yeah. There was just like an identity crisis. I think he actually said the word crisis in there.
Yeah. An existential crisis.
I had an existential crisis.
Right.
And
you start thinking, like, who the heck am I?
I was in that same place with, literally thinking about it 24/7. And then if I wasn't wanting to do it, then I was wanting to get it out of my life. It was like, that's where I was at all the time. I was like, how do I not do it? And then how do I do it? Like, those one of those two gears,
right?
Like, which are complete opposites, right? Like,
but that's
why you're in a crisis.
It's completely focused and obsessed on this topic. You know what I mean? Like, it took up so much brain's heart space.
Yeah.
Just to grapple with it one way or the other. It was like a teeter-totter. And that's part of the guilt. It leads to the shame and guilt, because there's this party that's like, oh God, like, save me, rescue me. And then there's another part that's like, I need more. And it's like, you feel like a Jekyll and Hyde as a, and which is more and more discouraging and harder to, like, feel authentic and not fake and honest, living a genuine, honest life. And it's just bad. So what does a golf nut who was 9 years old when he was exposed, what does he have to say about this question?
He's got to say that I'm not alone. He was someone that said, you're not alone, and that many men struggle with the same issue. So there's, that repeating theme of, it's not just you.
Not alone, there's not alone. Yep.
Many others. We weren't hearing about them back then, were we, Cody? But
nope.
None
well, if we heard about them, it was the people that have been mentioned on here that were glorifying it, celebrating it, sharing links, or sharing.
Well, whatever. I want to bring, like, that into point. Like, parents listening to this right now, you need to be talking to them about what are your friends doing and saying. Like, and however, whether it's ask them by name, but, like, they have friends that are doing this. I don't care what age your kid is. Like, they will have friends if they don't right now. And you need to help them figure out how to handle those types of relationships. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Because they may not be friends with that person, but they're still glorifying it and encouraging it, or trying to show it to them, or whatever. Talking about friends is certainly important, not just about, we did that with drugs and alcohol. If they do drugs or they're drinking at a young age, like, absolutely don't be around them. Like,
right. If you, like, your 10-year-old's like, oh, my friends are all drinking and getting, it's like,
yeah, you can go stay the night at their house this week. Yeah.
Oh, that's totally normal. Yeah, it's fine. No worries. It's
Right.
like, no, you'd be like, hey, like, I'm not trying to be mean and like overly judgmental here, but you're not hanging out with them anymore. You're not going to sleepovers at their house.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Well, all right, go ahead and finish
All right,
golf.
So a golf nut goes on to say, after saying that that you're not alone, many men struggle with the same issue, says that no matter how perverted I might believe I am, there is hope, and that hope is in Christ and in community with Christian men seeking relief. Very good.
Very good.
That's
all right. No residue.
We talked about that.
Good. We did. Thank you, a golf nut, for sharing that. A no residue says, now that you have seen it, he wished somebody would have told him this. Now that you have seen it, don't let it lure you in. It might make you feel manly and be very much comforting if you feel alone or rejected or stressed, but it will hinder you from becoming the man that God intended you to be. See what following lust did for King David with Bathsheba, right? Like that's a great biblical kind of case study to bring in. No residues for like, all right, how'd that work out? Terrible. It was destructive.
Okay.
It literally killed things. It killed Uriah. It killed the baby that was conceived. It was really, really destructive, for sure.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on no residues comment?
The word lure, I think that is really important. Use that with your kids. Like, it will lure you in. Again, playing into this, like, naturally, like, it's a conversation to have to say, you need to learn at the age of 10 or we don't have the age on no residue, but like at this age, to understand your flesh will want things that your heart and your soul and your spirit, that the Spirit of God does not want for you. Your flesh will deceive you, and it will lead you down this wide path to destruction. So you need to learn, just like Short King 20 said, I wish somebody had told me I was now in a spiritual battle. Your flesh is something that needs to be denied or put to death in cases. And it can't be something that can be trusted, or that you need to listen to the world that says, follow your heart or whatever. Typically, when they're saying that, they're talking about following your flesh. And so I think using the word lure, it's luring you away from that narrow path onto this big wide path that the world's saying it's so much more fun, it's so much more better, it's so great, it's whatever. Right. And that it's luring you, right? And again, kids can understand a fishing lure. They think it's something good. They think it's something they want. They think it's something they can eat that's good for them, whatever. And it will make you feel manly. So I think this is a very short and concise response, but I think it's really important, and it's a great conversation to have with kids, talking about the luring, and then talking about it may make you feel manly. It may make you just feel good, amazing. You have a high while you're doing it, and as it's happening for just a few seconds or whatever, like it feels like nothing else on earth, but it will make you feel alone. But there are other ways for you to feel comforted, because in this answer, they're talking about, you may want to do this just because you're stressed, because you feel lonely, because you feel rejected, because you're angry. You can't deal with your emotions. Don't turn to this to deal with your emotions. So there's so much in this 5 lines that we read here that's talking about, we're talking about how to deal with emotions, or negative emotions or painful emotions or whatever. We're talking about being lured by something, which means there's something trying to pull us in a certain direction. And
right.
That it acknowledging, I think it's really important to acknowledge it will feel good, because they might, they've got to know, like, feeling good isn't a good thing in this case, that it'll actually, it'll be what's so addicting, like, because that feeling comforts you in your time of sorrow. Like, I think
Garrett,
it's going super deep, right?
It is. Not to make it not super deep, because I'm trying to, but like, honestly, there's something really genius about in the movie Pinocchio. Okay, did anybody follow me yet? Where Pinocchio follows all these friends, and they're enticing them with, like, we're going to this place and you can do whatever you want and all the boys are free. And they go there, and they're doing all the things, like they're smoking and drinking and playing pool and cards and all the stuff that like would have been like really frowned upon. And they're just like, yeah, they're like breaking stuff and they're riding roller coasters and they're doing all this stuff. And then like it's an analogy, like, because they all end up turning into donkeys. I'll say donkeys, like they all turn into donkeys. And it was the lure. It was like this trick of like, I'll give you what you want. I'll give you what you have, freedom. But really it turns them into something that they end up becoming slaves, these donkeys that just pull carts. And it's like, I've always found that to be a really profound, like, visual analogy of like the world promises you all this, and what it leaves you with is like depression and shame and guilt and anxiety and lower value of yourself and less intimacy in your relationships, and typically less relationships. And so it's like, it's such a bait and lure type of trap that the enemy, he's seeking to devour you and kill you. He's like a lion prowling around seeking to devour. So, all right, Garrett, finish us out with no slips, no falls. What does he say about this?
He says, I wish that someone had told me that, like all addictions, this one is very damaging and that I need to turn from it immediately before I get hooked. So there we go with the hooked line again. And of course, talking about the damage. So,
yeah, right.
Again, back to our last episode. I don't think we mentioned it on this episode. We talked about many people who grew up that are around our age, the DARE program, the dog McGruff that said, kids, say no to drugs or whatever. Like, we got lots of warnings about say no to drugs, right? Remember the eggs in the omelet? This is your brain on drugs, like all that stuff, or the eggs on the frying pan.
Yeah.
Like, there were lots of public messages. There were like my parents told me, like, don't do this. It'll ruin you. It'll kill you. It'll whatever, like,
yep.
And it's wrong. It's sin. Like, we got tons of warning and zero about this, like zero conversation. Did they try to hide things? Sure. My parents tried to shelter me from it, but with no conversation. That's a confusing thing when all of a sudden you're curious and you got hormones and you're just exposed to it and you didn't know what was even happening. So, right. But again, this one very quickly in two lines, he talks about addiction, damage, turn from it before you get hooked. An experience everyone that we just, that responded to this has experienced, and millions and millions and millions more have experienced. So,
Garrett, have you ever been curious about what rat poison tastes like?
I actually have been curious, yes.
And I'm afraid to ask the second question. Did you taste it?
I did not.
Why not? You were curious though.
We had so many rats, we couldn't spare any. No,
dude, on the box, dude, it's covered with warnings and labels and like skull and crossbones and like, do not ingest, do not have this around kids. Like, this is a deadly substance. And you know that the point of rat poison is it tastes good. It's usually flavored like apple or like whatever else, but it's laced with poison. Yeah. And we need to view pornography that way. One thing I'll say on the end of this kind of episode is, because like Garrett said, I've been contemplating a lot with my 5-year-old son and my girls too, like my 3 girls too, but specifically with my son, like, what do I tell him? And you're hearing rough draft. I'm putting my rough draft out on the internet. Okay. That's a dangerous idea. Oh. But my thought, like, I was just thinking about this. The other day, I was like, as I was thinking about these episodes, I was thinking, what I wish somebody would have told me. And I feel like I want to tell my son Jude, I want to be like, listen, like, I want to like start by like the damaging, like just like stay away from it. But I also want him to know, like, you will never be in trouble for coming and confessing this sin to me. Like, it's not that there aren't consequences or measures that we will take. Hear me out on this. You're hearing a rough draft. I haven't even run it past my wife. Like, I'm just saying, it's not because I don't want to take it seriously. It's because what is more dangerous is him feeling like he can't talk about it. Yes, that he has to hide it. That we will talk about it and we will take the appropriate next steps and measures to protect him and learn from it. but that he will never be penalized. He will never be in trouble for coming and confessing on his own volition to let us know.
Yeah.
The point there, whether that's exactly the way I'll handle it or not, I'll give it more prayer and thought. But the point there is that I need Jude I need him to understand the grace of God in order to be equipped with what he needs to live into the truth of God.
Mm-hmm.
I need him. I found in my life that it has to be on the foundation of grace and not shame and guilt, that we've experienced that. And it should lead to repentance through the grace of God that even offers that opportunity to have repentance. And then through that forgiveness to be able to learn from it and grow from it, like Titus chapter 2 says. So I just feel like if you're listening, whether you're a parent or you're somebody struggling in this yourself, again, if you're like, man, like I'm a grown adult and I've never talked to anybody about this, and I wish somebody would have said this, but they never did. Well, guess what? Today we are, and those who helped participate in this, and we want to invite you into this conversation. We want to invite you to not be alone, to not walk alone, to experience the grace of God, to experience the transforming power of the Spirit of God in your life through confession and accountability and encouragement and grace. So like, man, reach out to us. Again, you see the link at the bottom. If you're listening on the podcast, it's FindingFreedomAndLight@gmail.com. Reach out to us. If you know us personally and you can text us, just text us and say, I need to talk. Like, that's why we do this, Garrett. Like, we don't just do this for kicks and giggles. We do this to help be like a megaphone, or better that, a lighthouse, saying like, hey, here's grace and truth on this topic. You're not alone. Let's talk about it honestly and openly in the light. Well, Garrett, any thoughts, in this topic? Yeah, just any thoughts before we close this out?
So my response to this question, it got covered in here, especially the first few as we saw it. I wish someone had talked to me and offered, they said, to walk with me. I didn't have to walk alone. I didn't have to be alone on this journey. I was in a battle. I wish somebody it's always somebody. So parents, once again, own that relationship, own your role in their life. Now, there are resources to help you. It's coming up in an upcoming episode. We're going to go over all the different resources that we found or people have shared with us. Some we have tried, used, or are using, and others we are just aware of them. And we hope to actually get some guests of people who are kind of running these or created these on our podcast. One of them, I'm actually doing this with my 10-year-old son right now. It's called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. Breaks it up into super short chapters and talks about all about the addictions and brains, all the negative consequences.
And Garrett, you are the one who illustrated the front of that cover, correct?
Yes, that was me. This was inspired. I'm kidding.
It was from a photo that was.
I had a bowl cut or a mushroom cut or whatever. I didn't have that.
Did you really?
You didn't have a
no judgment. No judgment. No judgment.
Okay. Anyway, but so what I'm doing, I'm having my son read the chapter out loud to me. It's really short, each chapter, and then it gives you the talking points. It gives 3 questions and 3 applications at the end of this. That don't put them on the spot. It's just to help a comprehension tool. And it's been really good. And so we're breaking it up. I only do 1 chapter at a time, literally, to just start this, just have the conversation regularly, twice a week. We're hitting on this. And so it's really, he didn't even really treat it like it was too awkward. And definitely the last few times we've done it, it's just like, that's what we do. And we talk about this. And so once again, normalize the conversation about this, because if he's not struggling with it yet, he'll struggle with it in the future. And I want him to be prepared and to have knowledge, but for us to have opened that communication up. Also, if you don't have something monitoring and or filtering your home, your devices, if you're not, if you have those available to your kids, please get something. I know almost everything has some sort of parental settings, but it doesn't necessarily send you reports, or you can't see what they're actually seeing. And usually there's always loopholes around it, as there are to most things. But, one thing is, if you want to click below, Cody put the Covenant Eyes link on here. If you want to get Covenant Eyes, it's something, it's really good for accountability. And you can also monitor what your kids, they have it for kids and adults, like kind of different settings and versions. So, but there are things out there. Just please be that someone that everyone wishes someone had in their life. And whether you're a mother raising your kids on your own, have that conversation. You got to be able to talk about these hard things. If you want to talk to us first, to like, how would you approach this issue? We would, like, that's what we're here for. We would be absolutely love to have that conversation with you, to help you in this kind of difficult journey. But a lot of it's just, okay, open the door to these conversations. That's what they need. That's what I needed. That's what all these men needed. And that's what we just want to encourage you to do. So thank you for everybody who participated in this.
Yes.
Really appreciate you.
Yes, we're so grateful. Again, you can always find more at betterequipped.net/freedom. And again, one more time, reach out to us at FindingFreedomAndLight@gmail.com.
All right, see this picture? I got my ring light on here. Let me move this thing.
Here, I'll put you full screen. Here we go.
This is what they need, guys. This is what they need. They're drowning. When I was 2 years old, all of us felt like we just fell in, just dropped straight into the deep end, couldn't swim.
Yeah.
Be that hand. I know this is Jesus. That's the representation of Jesus. But we all experienced in our lives someone intervened, and they reached a hand out to help and have that conversation, to create accountability and love, and to speak truth where we are only hearing lies, and to spread light where we are only living in darkness. And so be that person that can actually help them get to Jesus, where they feel like, I can't even get there. So that doesn't necessarily apply in all the same ways, because Jesus can certainly save someone without anyone getting involved. But if you're a parent, these are your kids. And as a man of God, if you're not talking about this at your church, you need to be. There are all the men in that church understand at least what this conversation would be like. Why isn't anybody having it? So you should be having this with your friends, with your neighbors, with your brothers, with your fathers, with whomever. Because if it hadn't been for Cody, almost 9 years ago, I could still be wallowing in the guilt, shame, darkness, depression of it all, and not have experienced freedom from it. So I'm so grateful that you were that person that just opened your mouth and gave me the inspiration to open mine too, and to live in the light. So thanks, Cody.
Oh, man. All glory to God. Yeah, man. Dude, we're so grateful. Again, thanks for listening, and share this resource out with others, whether it's this episode or this series or just this ministry, because there's a lot of people statistically who need this freedom and light in their life. And so let's be Jesus. Let's live into that. Again, if you need help, reach out, and we will see you soon on the next episode.